What is free equitism, and why did I think it warranted a podcast? Let's start with the words themselves. Freedom and equality. These two concepts form a striking juxtaposition. They're both foundational values that underpin our laws and institutions, yet they stand in perpetual tension, particularly in economics. Consider the notion of free markets versus wealth inequality. Just framing it this way, we find ourselves at the heart of our most entrenched political conflicts. Across the world, regardless of how many political parties exist or what they call themselves, there's always this economic axis running from left to right, a naming convention that, somewhat ironically, comes from the seating arrangement in the French Parliament. The right prioritizes the freedom to grow the economic pie, while the left obsesses over how equitably the slices are distributed. The right lives by the mantra, "A rising tide lifts all boats." Another irony, given that the phrase was popularized by Democratic President John F. Kennedy. The left, meanwhile, rallies behind slogans like "tax the rich." How these sides pursue their goals often seems secondary to their tribal instincts, but certain patterns emerge. The right champions free markets as the engine of wealth generation. They'll point to the Industrial Revolution and trumpet how extreme poverty plummeted from 80% in 1800 to 9.6% in 2015, all thanks to this pervasive yet surprisingly hard-to-define concept called capitalism. The left, by contrast, pushes for wealth redistribution with little regard for economic efficiency. They go after the rich, invoke price controls like minimum wage and rent control, and distribute in-kind benefits for everything from housing to groceries to heating. When well-meaning people try to bridge this divide, they inevitably resort to seeking middle ground, haggling over income tax rates or funding levels for subsidized housing, for instance. It's as if we're all staring at this dial where one end reads maximally wealthy but unequal, and the other maximally equal but less wealthy, and we're acting like the only debate worth having is where to set that dial. But here's the question nobody seems to ask. Why do we assume we must sacrifice overall wealth to reduce inequality? What if I told you we don't have to? What if the solution is hiding in plain sight? Consider this. In 2018, economist Samuel Hammond published The Free Market Welfare State, Preserving Dynamism in a Volatile World, through an economic policy think tank called the Niskanen Center. Again, notice that provocative juxtaposition in the title, free market and welfare state. Hammond's analysis plots nations on a grid. The x-axis measures economic freedom, things like tariff levels or the ease of firing a worker, as ranked by, of all organizations, the Heritage Foundation. The y-axis shows minimum income established through wealth redistribution. The results shatter our conventional wisdom about those supposedly socialist Nordic countries. Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and Norway rank 9th through 12th in economic freedom, while the United States lags behind at 25th. And yet, the Nordics still manage to provide a robust social safety net that far exceeds the USA, guaranteeing at least half the median income. This tells us something profound about the poverty of our economic thinking. We've trapped ourselves in a two-dimensional caricature, flipping through pages of a political picture book while ignoring the three-dimensional reality around us. Free equitism aims to break us out of this conceptual prison. It offers simple building blocks that can give anyone, even those with no formal economic training, a kind of X-ray vision. It lets you see through the complexity of economic issues and break them down into pieces that can be measured, tested, and improved through standard metrics. Think of it as finally stepping off that left-right tightrope we've been walking for centuries and realizing there's solid ground in every direction. In the episodes ahead, we're going to unpack the economic toolbox, piece by piece. We'll explore concepts like market failures, deadweight loss, the crucial distinction between allocative and equity effects, excludable versus non-excludable goods, decreasing marginal utility, and Pareto optimality. Don't let these terms intimidate you. Learning them is as straightforward as learning how chess pieces move. And just as simple chess rules give rise to profound strategic complexity, These basic economic concepts will reveal deep insights about how our society functions. Along the way, I'll be bringing in experts who can help us sharpen these tools and test their edges against real-world problems. But we won't confine ourselves to pure economics. The implications of free equitism extend far beyond markets and money. They touch on fundamental questions of human freedom and flourishing. What does it mean to truly optimize a society? How do we measure and maximize human well-being? These questions will lead us from the abstract realm of economic theory into concrete discussions about ethics, electoral systems, institutional design, and the very foundations of democratic society. Think of this podcast as your guide to seeing through the fog of partisan rhetoric and ideological warfare. We're not here to stake out middle ground between existing positions. We're here to map entirely new territory. By the time we're done, you'll have the tools to evaluate any economic policy proposal, not through the lens of left versus right, but through the clearer lens of what actually works to create both freedom and equity. Until next time, remember, the solutions to our most intractable problems might not lie in choosing between freedom and equality, but in finally understanding how they can work together.